Hello, class. Today I'm going to be going over something that I read in the introduction, and that's going to be single pilot resource management and aeronautical decision making. So let's get started with some of the things that the PTS for CFII says about single pilot resource management. It says that most accidents, most fatal accidents, occur due to lack of task management, risk management, automation management, aeronautical decision making, controlled flight into terrain, and situational awareness. Obviously, these are things that we're going to be tested on during the practical test, and we should be constantly trying to, train ourselves and get better at every day we go flying as we gain new certificates and as we gain more experience. So this is something we're definitely going to be tested on as part of the CFII exam, and I just wanted to go over it with you guys shortly. So let's start with single pilot resource management and what the definition of that is. First off, the examiner shall evaluate our ability throughout the practical test to use good aeronautical decision making. So that's during every test that I've ever taken. I've been examined on single pilot resource management and decision making. As I've gained more experience and more certifications and have been given a little bit more responsibility in aviation, that is something that I've grown accustomed to and something that I've certainly tried to train over and over to try to be the best pilot I can be in a single pilot environment as well. They're going to judge us on this based off an assessment matrix that is in an appendix at the bottom of the page. That appendix is something that I'm not super familiar with, so I'm hoping to gain a little bit more knowledge about that appendix as I go through this course and before my AA check ride. They do this by developing a scenario for us. So those scenarios are supposed to incorporate weather decisions and performance planning, but it could associate a bunch of different things, as far as single pilot resource management. So they do this by developing realistic scenarios. Every scenario I've been in during a check ride has been pretty realistic. And it's something that I either have faced or something that I could have easily faced had I not had this training and been prepared to make decisions to avoid some of these scenarios. Single pilot resource management, as defined by the FAA and the PTS, is the art and science of managing all resources, both on board the aircraft and from outside the airplane, available to a single pilot prior and during flight, to ensure a successful outcome of the flight is never in doubt. So that's going to be things like the human resources. That's going to be dispatchers, weather briefers, maintainers, air traffic controllers, all of the above, anything from outside the airplane. So there's also inside resources as well. That's going to be your GPS, your G1000 if you have one, and information you can gather inside the plane. Your radios, ATISs from outside. There's tons of information you can gather while flying to paint a fuller picture of your environment, whether you're inside a cloud or not. Aeronautical decision making is something that they're obviously going to be testing us on as well. Our ability to use the decide model during analytical times where we have a minute to make a decision, and that's when we can detect the problem, estimate how bad this problem could be, choose whether or not we're going to continue our course or deviate, identify whether or not what we're going to do, and then actually do the thing and evaluate the outcome and then reassess. So after that decide model, you start again and go back to the top. There's also the 3P model for that more automatic decision making, and that's going to be where you perceive the problem, you process the problem, and then you perform some kind of maneuver deviation to alleviate that problem. That's going to be more of your automatic decision making when you don't have minutes or any time to assess. That could be an engine out or some kind of catastrophic failure, whereas the decide model could be lost comms. You have a second, you don't need to rush because you lost comms. You have a second to punch in 7600, make a plan, and then act on that plan. We're also going to be testing on our ability to recognize hazardous attitudes. These hazardous attitudes are obviously something that could jump up and bite us if we're flying in a cloud, particularly. The macho, if anybody can do it, I can. Could have you breaching your personal minimums, flying down, to an airport with overcast of 200, and then you find yourself in a predicament where you're in an unsafe spot. There are several hazardous attitudes. That's just one of them, something we need to be on the lookout for. We need to be able to handle any situation that arises. So if something comes up during the pre-flight, whether it's just during the flight, whether it's part of the plan for the DPE or whoever's doing your check ride, or if it's something that actually occurs while you're on your check ride, God forbid, we have to be able to take control as PIC, make a decision, and go with it. And it needs to be the safe and correct decision. And then we are going to be able to have to explain how the elements of risk management, CFIT, situational awareness, automation, and all that resulted in us taking that course of action. So a lot to do there. Risk management, they want to make sure we have the ability to use tools like the PAVE checklist to make sure that we are ready to fly, the aircraft's ready to fly, the environment is something suitable for us to fly in, and there's no external factors that are, clouding our decision-making ability. The pilot obviously uses that I'm safe checklist that the FAA likes us to use. It's a good model to use to make sure you're fit to fly. Weather reports, things like that for the outside environment are also very necessary. They also want us to understand and know the 5P model. And that's the plan, the plane, the pilot, the passengers, and the program. So making sure our plane is ready to go again. Our plan is ready, and our plane can execute that plan. The pilot's ready, right? The passengers understand what's expected of them, whether it's in a sterile cockpit environment, during an approach, or whenever. When ATC's talking on the radio, or if they see a hazardous situation to say something. And then the program. If you're flying a G1000 for the first time, it could be a great program, but it could add a lot to your workload if you're not ready for it. Or if you're used to flying G1000s, you could be very used to tuning radios, doing everything, but then you find yourself in a six-pack, and now all of a sudden you're adding a lot more to your workload as well. Task management. We're going to have to be able to prioritize tasks, minimize distractions, and execute all checklists and procedures in a safe and effective way. That's going to be very important for us as a single pilot and as an IFR pilot as well. Situational awareness. So we need to be able to explain the concepts of situational awareness, what the hazards of becoming fixated on a single problem are. Your attitude indicator fails, and now you're focused on that. There could be other things that could have helped you resolve that situation, but instead, if you fixate on that one thing, now all of a sudden you find yourself in a hazardous or potential risky situation. Excuse me. And then our uses of navigational displays and traffic displays, terrain alert and warning system, all come into play as well for situational awareness. They're going to be talking about controlled flight into terrain with us, using current charts that are up to date. Very important in IFR flying. Things change all the time on IFR charts, so it's important to make sure we're up to date and that we have the right equipment. If you're using paper charts, $11 or $12 is not worth your life. Make sure you grab a new chart if you're flying an actual instrument or anytime. Be aware of potential obstacles. The G1000 does a good job at that, but still, it's our job to make sure that we're being aware. Terrain displays and terrain alert warning systems, all things we need to be able to discuss and talk about. Planning departures and arrivals, all those things play into control flight into terrain. Make sure you have the climb performance, the stopping performance, all that. And automation management, which I mentioned earlier. It's just being able to manage whatever system you have on board and being familiar with it. I'm generally familiar with the G1000. Of course, there's many things I can learn about that very powerful system, but it's up to us to make sure we have a good plan, we know the system well enough to fly it, and that we're constantly learning. So automation management is a big one. Operation of the autopilot, that's part of that. If you have a GFC 700, or 750, like our, it's slipping my mind. The autopilot for the G1000, or do you have a CAP 140? You have two very different autopilots. If the autopilot doesn't work the way you expect it to, being able to recognize and adapt to that, maybe hand fly the airplane if you need to. And then our use of checklists, again, very important. The biblical reference I use to kind of encompass this is we're never alone out there. We're always, as Christians, God is always on our side. He's always with us, and he always has the best intentions for us. So John 14:17 says, even the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. You know him, for he dwells within or with you and will be in you. That's obviously very important. When you find yourself in that hazardous situation, something's gotten out of your control, it's good to know that God is always with you and has the best intentions for you, so you can pull through that. I know this went a little bit long. I don't know what our time constraints was, so I'm going to end it now. But good luck to you guys in class. If you guys need anything, please reach out. Thank you for your time.